All right, hey, my name is Patrick Eves. I'm the founder and CEO of Mindmaven. And so today we're joined by a very special guest. It is Sidharth Kakkar. He is the founder and CEO of a company called Subscript that focuses on data analytics to empower basically B2B SaaS leaders with subscription metrics. Sidharth is actually somebody I was really looking forward to because he has chosen a way of managing his company that I think most of you guys have never heard of. Is exceptionally intriguing in my view. Just to catch you guys up on some of the things that I've heard he is doing in his company. Number one is that he's basically minimizing meetings. The company has no meetings, and he lets everybody in the company do whatever they want to do in terms of supporting the mission of the company with their work. Sidharth, so maybe in your own words, describe what exactly it is that you do and where it came from and why you're such a believer in it.
What we're doing at Subscript is we're trying to empower finance leaders of subscription companies to be able to better both understand their businesses, manage their businesses, support their CEOs and the rest of the leadership team, make sure that they're collecting money, all of those things. So we really want to empower that person, the finance leader. And the way we're sort of operating company and building things is some of the principles that you mentioned around giving people a lot of autonomy, almost complete autonomy in terms of how they go about their work, what they work on, when they work, all of those things. So really treating people with the respect that I think they deserve as like intelligent human beings, and they are intelligent human beings because we spend a lot of time finding the right ones to join our team. And then we make sure that they have all the context that they need, all the information that they need. So there's a ton of transparency that goes with this. We hire them all around the world, but we also don't want people waking up at 3 a.m. to attend some pointless stand-up. And so we do this all without meetings at all. And that has resulted in a work culture that is one that I personally really love working in, and so does the rest of the Subscript team.
Yes, did I not hear that? When we once talked, you said something about some employees coming to you saying you that they are completely screwed because they probably can't work anywhere else.
Yeah, the word is I'm ruined for working anywhere else.
Yes, there you go. Well, what made you think this is the right way to operate?
Yeah, it came out of something that was true for me in my last company. So my last company, I started when I was 26 years old. And like most 26-year-old, especially men, I was like really quite clueless about the world, but quite confident that I knew everything there is to know. I was a first-time manager and a first-time building a company and all of those things. And I feel like I made every mistake in the book. The mistake that I think most managers make in the beginning is that they become very micromanagey, because what made them good before was they were able to like really get into the details of their work and be very good at what they do. That's how they became managers. But then you start doing that with people, and it turns out that is a completely incorrect way of actually getting work done with a team. And so you have to kind of unlearn your habits that made you good so far, and you have to relearn new habits. And different people make that transition in different ways and with different degrees of success. Or some people I've learned manage to not make that transition and still be wildly successful. I have not quite figured out the secret to that one, but it does seem to be occasionally true. So I did all of that, and I was in the beginning, I think, in retrospect, a pretty bad manager. And then over the course of building my last company, that's about like 6.5 years, I kind of grew a lot and realized this is not working. I need a better way to do some of these things. And so that led me to how I do things now, which is obviously like, it is like the antithesis of micromanagement. I am taking it to I'm taking that path to its logical other extreme.
Yes.
And I think it's been perfect for me.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. To sum it up, what you're saying basically in your approach is that you basically say, look, I hire people for the reason because I want to trust them in their ability to do their job. And so the ultimate way of actually giving them trust is to basically let them completely autonomously decide what they will work on. And that is the way you think you will be able to succeed in getting the most high-performing team out of there. Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly about like getting the right team. And then it's also about making sure that they are able to do their best work, right? Like if you get amazing people, but then you stifle the creativity out of them or stifle the productivity out of them because
Hmm.
they had to sit in meetings for 6 hours a day, well, then what was the point?
Hmm.
Why did you bother?
Yes, 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 exactly. You said it has worked for you really well. Is it working for your company as well?
Yeah, so far so good. It's been going really well in terms of getting really good people on board because I think this appeals to a lot of people. It also does not appeal to some people, but that's what you want in like company culture. You do not want it to appeal to everybody. It works really well in terms of retaining exceptional people, and it works really well in terms of productivity. So like just everyone at Subscript is exceptionally productive. And it is not because they are working 80 hours a week. It's because they have like all these other things that are set up really well for them. And then it's working well for the business. Like,
Hmm.
we're a startup that's growing quickly and we have customers who are extremely happy with what we're building. And we have sort of a really grand vision and we're accomplishing it with it's a small team having an outsized impact in terms of going towards that grand vision.
You're basically achieving the dream of every startup founder by doing probably something that most younger startup founders find completely counterintuitive.
I would have
Like
found it
you,
completely counterintuitive. Yeah.
exactly. But you're telling the world and our audience right now it is working. You know, there's a way to doing it. And is it true that your company is almost 100% remote?
Yeah, it's 100% remote.
Right, exactly. And so you be probably saying, hey, you can have an exceptionally productive company while working remotely. You just have to basically change the mode of how you're operating that fits more to A, working remotely, but B, to basically how high performant people would actually like to work.
That's
Okay.
exactly it.
So do you have examples of things where you see that it's really working? Just one or two little things you really like, tactical, pragmatic examples where you're saying, look, this is now happening in my company, and because of that, it's really working. And then also on the other side, some examples that you think makes you a little bit nervous about this approach, or you haven't quite seen the evidence that it works, or even
Yeah.
like mistakes along the way that might have happened.
Yeah. I have actually a very recent example that that made me feel like, oh my God, that was so cool. And this is around a one of our engineers who's a little bit less experienced than some of the rest of the team, and they everyone gets to operate autonomously, right? No one gets told what to do, and that is particularly a little bit risky with folks who don't have a ton of experience because then they don't necessarily know like what do you need to do to make the company's goals work and all of that type of stuff. And this person is also in a place where like they English is like very much a second language for them, so like that increases that risk further because obviously Subscript operates in English
Hmm.
because it's just like the most commonly spoken language in the
Sure.
business world. There was this one case where this thing happened where this person like realized that a portion of the code base was getting a little bit tangly and a little bit harder to work with. And so they essentially wrote up this like documentation around how we've organized it currently, which are the ways in which we want to reorganize certain parts of it, which are the super high priority items that we should address immediately, either for sort of readability reasons or for performance reasons or for just general like being able to work with it in the future reasons. And then went ahead and like did like half those things. And this like no one asked this person to do it. No one told them that this was even a thing that like someone does. It was just they were like, how do I make this whole thing better? And they were like, this would definitely make the whole thing better because it'll make people like at Subscript we really care about being able to ship really fast. This will help people ship really fast. At Subscript we really care about everyone being able to find the information that they need because we care about transparency because that enables the autonomy. And so like
Hmm.
having this type of thing. And seeing like a person who isn't like, this is not a 10 years of experience and like super deep in the like the tech world person with like tons of like examples of having seen this kind of thing. Like, this is someone who's like using their best judgment, which is what we hired them to be able to do. And I think in like an environment where someone was just like assigning them tickets and said, work on this ticket, work on this ticket, I don't think this would have happened, which is what the environment they would be in. Or like, they'd be like, oh, I'm thinking about working on XYZ project. What do you think? Should I work on it? Or like essentially seeking approval from their manager. And then their manager being like, no, I need to work on a ticket or whatever. Like that's what normally happens. That does not happen at Subscript.
Yeah.
But like he uses judgment. And one, I never had to like be involved. Like I literally didn't know about this until someone else called it out in one of the weekly reflections. Or like, oh, it was so super awesome how this person did this thing. And I was like, oh, I wonder what they did. And like, I went and took a look and like started just like being like, oh my God, this is so cool. So like I was not involved. This vastly reduces the number of things where I am a limiting factor, right? Because like no one needs to even tell me, let alone ask for my permission. And something amazing happened for the team. Like everyone was like, this is so cool. And then they called it out as like, this was so cool. And so like that person got to exercise their autonomy and also get a lot of praise for it. I think it was amazing for all sorts of reasons. So that's one where I was like, this is so great.
Yeah, exactly. And that was just recently what seemed to happen even since we talked last, right? The other example...
I discovered this about yesterday.
Oh, exactly. See, okay, cool. Yeah, I can see how you're still beaming off of that. But there is a question I have about that basically pertains to you and your comfort level with this that I think maybe you have gotten to and others don't. But before we do that, last time we talked, you had another really good example because it was more strategic in the sense that one person wanted to do was absolutely convinced to build something and you weren't quite sure. Do you remember that example?
This happens like fairly frequently because, in a startup, there's a lot of like decisions that are quite nuanced, and it's very hard to know what the right answer. It's even really hard to know like later what the right answer was. So you end up in these situations quite often where there's like objective like right answer is like hard to determine, and then there's the sort of what any given person can determine based on the level of context that they have, and those things can be a little bit nerve-wracking for sure. So an example would be like this is a customer-facing person who is working with a customer, an important customer, and they really wanted a thing that like was super important to them. And in a lot of cases, you have like a very sort of simple heuristic of like, we should build the thing for the case. But like most companies essentially like important customer goes to the CEO says like, do it or don't do it or whatever. And like that person's decision is it. What happens at Subscript is this person brought this back to the team and was like, here's what the customer's asking for and I think we should do it. And then essentially what ends up happening at Subscript is the rest of the conversation is both other people weighing in, and it works out really well that the people who are most sort of qualified in that they have the most context around the technical parts of it, the design parts of it, the like customer facing parts of it, the rest of the customers part of it, they'll sort of weigh in a bunch. And so you get like a lot of essentially expert opinions on that specific topic. And then what ends up happening is people, this is your job in my view as a leader, if you do this part well, which is you provide the cultural context of like, here's how we're thinking about the next month, here's how we think about the next quarter, and here's how we're thinking about the next 6 months, year, whatever. Then everyone should be able to bring that to the conversation as like, not only is this like, I am an expert in like this part of the code base and here's how like the risks are with whatever, but also in general, our strategy is towards this. And so like, we should or should not do it. So I think in this case, what ended up happening was we decided not to build the thing I was not involved, once again. I was watching, but like I was just like reading the messages and stuff because they sing. But I was not the person who, like, no one said, Sidharth, make this decision. And that person sort of made the call around with the rest of the team saying like, yeah, okay, we're not going to do this because of all these things that are matter for our culture. Maybe we were wrong. I don't know, right? Because there's a lot of things where you're just like not sure necessarily with a sort of startup. But I think what I appreciate is like the process is like so good that even when the decision is not the one I would have liked to make, I can't like the process is so good, right? And so I'm comfortable with people making the decision I would not make, even with big things.
So Sidharth, let's bring up the 26-year-old Sidharth again, because I think that Sidharth is basically much more similar to a lot of people listening right now. and basically what still the stereotypical manager in a startup is these days, right? And in both of those examples, like in the one where the engineer goes and rewrites the entire code, I can just imagine most people being like heckish nervous that actually, because of the inexperience of that more junior person, isn't actually the right move. What I'm asking you, so that's number one, and the other one is let's assume, for example, that person could have very well be that person decided to build that feature, right? And probably has happened in the past where they just built it, and you don't know if it's right or not, but you know that this person is committing significant resources to making that basically happen in some form or the other. I can just only imagine how most people would have this urge of wanting to basically be sort of the let's double check this. Are you sure? Like get in and tell them what to do and what not to do in some form or the other. Did you get rid of this completely? And more importantly, how do you manage those moments? What do you do? What's the advice you have for people that struggle with this?
The main thing I would say is like there's this fear of like catastrophic outcomes based on these things. Whether it's like someone worked on the wrong thing and therefore the most important thing didn't happen because there's time to spend elsewhere, or like someone rewrote a thing and there's like massive security vulnerabilities and you get hacked around. Like those things just don't happen. Like people are just too smart for that. Like the people you hired are too smart for that. And if they aren't, you need to hire new people because just these things don't happen. And in my experience, what instead ends up happening is that when there is a thing that is like the most important thing to work on, and you as a leader do the right job setting the context, which is, for example, like we're launching this new thing. This is the most important thing for the company right now. Let's make sure we get this new thing. I promise you, everyone will figure out how to make that happen. No one is going to go off like, refactor something that is completely irrelevant. And if that person does, be curious, ask them, like, how did you think about that? Like, find a time where you do, whatever, one-on-ones or feedback or whatever, and ask them about it. Because you might end up getting an answer that will be, like, really surprising to you. It'll be like, like, I totally did not make that connection, but I see it now that you mention it. Because so many times that collective wisdom will be better than just your brain.
Than what you think as the 26-year-old I know it all type of person. Yeah, so basically what I hear you say is the advice is like, look, if you go with this methodology, your rewards can be exceptional. Not only that you have a more performing team, but you also are living your life as the founder and CEO with a lot less mental load and with a lot less stress, for that matter. And probably with the ability to do what you need to do most, which is basically set the agenda, set the vision, and make sure that the people are making the decisions on what they're working on based on the fundamental belief that there's strong alignment. But you have to first get comfortable with that, and we can both recognize that's not easy for everybody to do. The only thing I can show everybody here is like, look, here's Sidharth who's done it, and therefore it is possible, and he's seeing results that are uncommon. What do you do to get that alignment? What is your role in this management approach that you have?
Yeah. So when there is, like I said, catastrophic outcomes don't happen, but there will be times where someone makes like the wrong left turn, and they end up having to like go. It's sort of like that, right? Like in the driving analogy, if you're going from San Francisco to LA, no one's going to start driving north. That's not going to happen. But you might have someone who like takes the wrong exit on the highway. So when that happens, how do you think about that? And the way I think about it is I think about it at a system level. So I assume the person is smart and I can trust them and they're doing their job. If those things are not true, then I have to figure out how to deal with that. But I assume that. And then if I assume that, then I go, well, what was wrong with the system that they didn't make the right call? And often the answer is like, I have forgotten to talk about XYZ thing because it was obvious in my head, but literally obvious in no one else's head because I forgot to tell everyone. Because you as the leader do have more context than everyone else. To me, that is more or less your job, to have that more context and to make sure that everyone else has that more context, and then making sure that they're able to use that context to make like great decisions and produce great outcomes. So I think of it as like, how do I debug this system? And usually the answer is like, oh, let's like focus a little bit more on this, because it's not just that person who doesn't have this context. It turns out no one else does either, and this is going to prevent everyone else making, rather than me saying like, "Ooh, bad! You shouldn't have taken the exit. You should have taken the next exit." Now that person has no clue why, and they're just like, "Oh man, I messed up," and no one else knows why, and so now everyone else is gonna make. It's just no, like the bad idea.
Yeah, exactly. So what you're saying is your job as a CEO becomes one that actually sounds to me exceptionally fun. Your job is just to make sure that people know where we're aiming for, you know, long term, but also short term, and then basically provide whatever context anybody needs to be able to make the right decisions on how they want to use their time in building. And I can just imagine that being really fun, because you get to have a lot of very inspiring conversations that are quite awesome. So I have two more questions for you before we wrap up. The first one is, this is obviously a series around human first leadership, which really focuses on people that want to lead in a way that basically puts the human dead center, because they believe that's the way you will succeed. Why is your approach human first? Why is it very humane? What are people that are following you getting out of this? What have you seen? What have you heard? What have people said?
Yeah. So in my view, the more micromanaging approach is sort of treating people like cogs in a machine. And you're like, you're this cog and your job is to turn this way, and that's what you do. This approach is much more, you're a intelligent person who has the ability to understand complex ideas and then to produce outcomes that literally no one else can. Because you are able to connect the dots that are provided to you in a way that only you can, and that is going to be extremely positive for the company and positive for the team. So that is sort of that is, I think, at its core, where the
Yeah.
person goes from cog to human.
To meaningful work where you can actually control your destiny and achieve some of the things that most humans are most motivated by, and that is mastery, right?
Yeah.
And autonomy, which are two of the biggest factors that are more motivating than, for example, money or anything, right? And would you say it's fair that you've seen that play out in terms of statistics like attrition rates or loyalty? I mean, obviously you said performance, but
Yeah, I mean, we're a young startup, but we have had zero people leave, zero
amazing.
voluntary turnover so far. You never see people just kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, just like phoning it in or slacking off. Like you basically, and it's like there's no artificial carrots and sticks type of like situation going on that motivates them to do it. It's because they're, you know, we're sort of creating the situation in which they
Yeah.
can be excited and motivated.
This is awesome. I love this. So my last question for you is this. It's a big one. So you're obviously really convinced of this, or really excited about it. And in fact, it's infectious. I'm excited about it, right? Like I'm thinking, hey, more people should do this. So put on your visionary head and look at the ecosystem that we're operating, the startup ecosystem. What is your vision for the future? You know, in terms like in 10, 20 years, how are we going to be working if your methodology is indeed the way to operate? What do you wish for us as an ecosystem? Where, you
Yeah.
know, if this takes root, where's this going?
Um, I think the thing that you're doing here and that a lot of people are waking up to is that like leading people is it's a skill, a very complex one that's distinct from all the other skills that especially got you there and that are a part of your job. And really thinking about it and like, you know, listening to series like this or like really sort of being mindful about what that means and what the impact you're having on other people and like what kind of sort of
Hmm.
environment you're creating. It's just so good for everybody, right? Like
Hmm.
it's good for the leader because you're not fretting about like the random little things anymore, and you're
Hmm.
much more free to do your best work. And then it's great
Hmm.
for the people being led because it's just like so much more inspiring. Like, it's just good for the world, you know? And so that's what I hope happens. Like I hope there's just more inspiring leadership out there as a result of this. And ideally, people who feel just more fulfilled by their work.
That would be awesome. I tell you what I would hope for. I will hope that managers like you basically make school in such a way that basically in 10, 20 years, the most successful, high-performing startups we see are allowing people to be working on what they want autonomously, making them be empowered, and making the people find meaning instead of being just a robot or a cog in the wheel that are basically being treated like infants by the economic model we have right now, but let people really live in an exceptionally fulfilled way because of that, and that those companies are the ones we're seeing are being the most successful ones. That's what I'm hoping for, because I think that is a way in which we'll be ultimately living in a society where a lot more people will be a lot more happier. Couldn't we use a little bit of that?
Agreed.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sidharth, for coming to talk to us. And I thought it was a very inspiring, very exciting session that you and I had.
Thanks, Patrick. It was a lovely conversation.